Good morning, all. Todd, you're in Henrico County. I have 8:30. It looks like we have pretty good attendance here. So welcome to our special called Technical Advisory Committee for Cvta. Hopefully this will go relatively quick. But obviously we have a lot to talk about regarding the standard project agreement. So with that being said, we need to cover the statement regarding virtual meetings. Chet, you don't have to read the whole thing, correct?
We don't have to read it at all because it was included with the packet. So that's a new discovery. So that should help with moving the the agenda forward.
Very well, that's a positive. So roll call and certification of a quorum. Nicole, are you going to take care of that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. I'm going to start with Town of Ashland, Ms. Amos. Charles City County, Ms. Russell.
Present.
Chesterfield County, Ms. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Walker.
Here.
Goochland County, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Kilduff. Hanover County, Mr. Vidunas.
Here.
Mr. Flagg.
Here.
Henrico County, Mr. Yor.
Here.
Ms. Meidler. New Kent County, Ms. Leduc.
Here. Good morning.
Good morning. Powhatan County, Mr. Pompey. Mr. Chardine.
Here.
City of Richmond, Ms. Clark.
Here.
Mr. Bridewell. DRPT, Mr. Brule.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Binsky. VDOT, Mr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Riblet.
Here.
GRTC, Ms. Torres.
Here.
Ms. Del Ross.
Here.
RMTA, Ms. Dean.
Here.
And Plan RVA, Mr. Parsons.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, that concludes the roll call for attendance.
Do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do. I can certify that we have a quorum.
Thank you. All right. Next item, consideration of amendments to the action meeting agenda. Does anybody have any additional items they would like to discuss today? All right, hearing none. Public comment period. Chet, do we have anybody that has requested public comment for this meeting?
No, sir, I don't believe we do.
Okay, next item, Cbta TAC Chairman's report. I have nothing to report, so that moves us to the next item, which I assume we want to spend a little bit of time talking about. Agreement for revenue transfers with the Virginia Department of Transportation. The exhibits revised materials to be distributed as they are available, which I believe was distributed last night, Chet, or late yesterday.
That's correct. And I'm gonna put it on the screen.
And has Eric been able to join us?
Yes, he's here.
Okay. All right, you want to jump in on this, Chet?
Sure. So yeah, we have comments back from VDOT that are not finalized. And that was sent out in red line to you yesterday late afternoon. Not sure if everyone had a chance to see it. So I think probably the best use of our time is to maybe have Eric provide any other background in terms of who's had a look at this, and then kind of walk us through. Does that make sense? Eric, do you think that's a good approach? You're on mute. Eric, you're on mute.
Okay, is that better? Sorry about
Yes.
that.
Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, happy to do that. Like everybody else, I haven't had much time to review it either. But we can walk through it together, and sort of gave it a summary review, and we can walk through it together and discuss it as we go. Just generally speaking, just so everybody's aware, there is a caveat with this version. It hasn't been completely stamped with approval by VDOT, but this is what we have to work with. So, and also generally, I think, I think the approach that we should consider is, this is obviously an agreement to distribute responsibilities and risks, and they have to be reasonably distributed between both parties. I don't think anybody can expect either party to bear all the risks. So I think that's basically what you're going to see from VDOT in a lot of these comments is, we're not, VDOT can't bear all the risk here. But certainly they're willing to bear a good deal. And so that's, I think, reflected in some of these comments and from some of these revisions. And these revisions are based upon the last draft that we submitted to them, okay? So if you'll scroll down, nothing on page 1 or page 2. Page 3, the footnote number 1 down the bottom there. I think this is reflective of how this is going to work. I think for large issues, certainly the Cvta you want to weigh in, but as these projects unfold naturally, there's going to be administrative items, there's going to be task items that need to be resolved in a timely manner. And I think VDOT makes a good point. We can't expect every decision to be routed all the way up through the Cvta. There needs to be some executive authority exercised by someone to make decisions and move projects along in a timely manner. And I don't think that's unreasonable. I think that's exactly what is called for in this kind of an arrangement. So that's what needs to be resolved. So Cvta, it's going to take time. If Cvta decides to hire an executive director, that process is going to take time. And I don't know if there's consensus about the path forward on that yet, but it's something that needs to be resolved and considered. I think it's reasonable to look forward to the day when there is an executive director who will be empowered to make these decisions. So just anyway, food for thought. So let me know if you have any input on that. Does anybody have anybody want to discuss that at this point?
Todd, this is Barb.
Morning, Barb. Go ahead.
The challenge that we have right now is that we really have not established the administrative roles of the Cvta. The agreement later on talks about a Cvta program coordinator on Appendix A, I think it is. So there's a designated individual on a project by project basis. To move this along here, we could replace the references that were in the original agreement as executive director with authorized Cvta representative.
So is that a suggested edit to our draft?
Yep.
Okay. Chet and Eric, are you capturing that?
Yeah, I wrote that down. Barb, where is the program coordinator reference? Can you, in one of the appendices that there's attached to the SPA?
Yeah, Appendix A.
Okay.
On that. Oh, there it is. Cvta program coordinator, the third line.
Yeah, got it. I might, maybe instead of authorized CVTA representative, do you want to just say CVTA program coordinator?
Well, I kind of like the more general. I think there's a process that we probably need to work out on the CBTA side about how project issues would flow. When things need to come back to the full authority, when things can be handled behind the scenes, you know, sort of like we do with tip amendments and tip adjustments, you know, that kind of thinking. Trying to figure out how different issues are going to work through the authority. So if we can just leave it as authorized CVTA representative in the body of the agreement, recognizing that we also have this program coordinator listed on Appendix A. I think we've got the different roles adequately spelled out.
Okay. All right.
Mr.
Go
Chair, one other comment.
Yes, Chet.
It's not relevant to this agreement, but I think it's worth TAC knowing that the finance directors are working on a financial services proposal right now that's going for the finance committee in December. And they're having the same discussion that there needs to be a point of contact rather than general board connection. So there's some connection between different documents that are being developed right now. So this is a good discussion to have.
So, Chet, to that point, are you and Eric going to be able to sort of cross-reference those documents to make sure they're consistent and no conflicts between language?
We'll do our best to do that, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Dirana.
Good morning, Darana. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. Yeah, do we think it would be advantageous to have that consideration for the board for the next CVTA board meeting, at least a discussion? Because I think originally from the bylaws, you know, we kind of had those designees that we could have put the name in, such as the chair making the decision. But at the board decided they didn't want the person to have all of that power. So I think it's worth a conversation, at least for them to begin to think about who is going to have some of this authorized power, so that we can get some direction when we're doing some of these documents and agreements.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I do remember that specific change they requested in the draft bylaws. So I guess my concern is we don't want to take these decisions and basically dump it on the CVTA in December and say tell us what you want in here. I think we need a good game plan going into that with hopefully just getting their concurrence on that language.
Yes, sir. I completely agree. I like Barb's suggestive language with authorized CVTA. I was just really referring to getting that in front of them to say that right now we need to be thinking about who is this authorized person going to be.
Understood.
Yeah,
Todd, I think it'd be appropriate in your update for the TAC on December 4th to share that this is one of the things that the TAC is trying to iron out.
Yeah, sure.
Todd, this is Barb.
Go ahead, Barb.
There are a lot of workflow processes to work through. We talked about that after the last authority meeting.
Right.
So, maybe that is an assignment for TAC to tackle.
Certainly when the timing is appropriate, whether that be I guess we have a December TAC meeting on the calendar, Chet.
We do.
So we can certainly begin that conversation there. Okay, so are we ready to go back to the note on the
Sure.
draft?
So the next track change is on the bottom of page 4. It's on screen there. This regards payment requisitions. It softens the language a little bit about VDOT's payment requisitions to Cvta. I think their change is not unreasonable. Certainly, you can't put in a position where just because they submit a payment requisition on day 91, they're not going to get paid. That wouldn't be reasonable. Let's see, moving along.
So can I comment on that?
Sure.
Yes, Barb.
Just for people's reference, that was taken out of the locally administered project agreement. So that's language that VDOT has in the agreement that is signed between counties and VDOT when counties administer VDOT funded projects. I think it is fine to soften that, but VDOT should soften it in their agreement with counties also.
Okay, I mean, that's reasonable too. I wouldn't argue that point.
Barb, have you or anybody else on this call been held to the letter of that language in the locally administered agreements?
We certainly have that in the back of our mind whenever we are incurring expenses associated with a project.
Understood. Shane, are you making note of that?
Yes, I'm on it.
Thank you, sir. So where do we want to go with the language on this one then?
I'm okay with softening it up. I just think if that is appropriate in VDOT's mind here, it should be easy enough to change it in the other agreement that localities are working under.
Well, if we're able to get this resolved, certainly this would be an arrow in your quiver in that discussion with VDOT. Seems to me, but.
So Eric, do you need suggested language, or are you good on this?
But it sounds like it's acceptable to everyone to accept VDOT's change there. So,
Okay.
Is that a fair statement?
That's true for me.
Anybody else have any issues with that language? Okay, hearing none. Moving on.
Okay, moving along. The notes towards the bottom of page 5 there on your screen, footnotes 2 and 3, that the footnote 2 references the issue we just resolved. Number 3 references the documents and drawings and conceptual designs and those kinds of documents that we are requesting that VDOT provide to Cvta along the way. They are seeking a little bit more clarity on what the expectation is there. But if you want my 2 cents, I think it's clear enough as it stands. But if we want to put additional language in there, that might be reasonable. Maybe Shane can provide some guidance about what their question is. I don't know. Or
Yeah, Eric, I'll be happy to try to clarify a little bit. Basically, our concern was obviously we'll provide anything anybody desires. We just would like to be able to keep it in a repository and at milestones provide CVTA documents or as they're requested. We just don't want to have a continuous flow of every piece of information going to CVTA until the end of the project.
I think the language reflects that sort of milestone plan submittal concept. If you guys have something that you want to suggest as a revision to make that more clear, you can, but
I think if you just responded back and said it was expected at milestones and as requested, that would probably solve it without any change in the language.
okay.
Todd,
Yes, Joe.
I don't know that, I mean, respectfully, to Shane's comment, I mean, there may be times that we're not at a milestone, but I think back to kind of the whereases where, you know, we're in the spirit of cooperation here between VDOT and the CVTA to administer and develop these projects, that that they would entertain reasonable requests for information and that we don't need to get any more specific than that.
Yeah, and while you were talking, either Eric or Chet added the or upon request. Does that capture the spirit of what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm driving. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I really don't find that language objectionable.
Very well. Any other issues, concerns, comments on this note? All right, very good. Next.
Just bear with me a second. Okay, moving along, they are redacting or eliminating paragraph 14. And the note down there at the bottom provides an explanation for that. Are there concerns about elimination of paragraph 14?
Eric, this is Todd. So I noticed that that sort of theme comes up on several other notes coming up regarding the federal risk that is on VDOT and not CVTA. So I think as long as we're consistent in what we reflect with respect to VDOT's position on that, we can move forward.
Okay, so that's acceptable.
Well, I'll defer to the group.
So Todd, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
The situation that I was thinking of there was we may have a project that has both CVTA and federal funds, you know, significant federal funds. And if for some reason something gets messed up and the federal money gets taken away, has to be returned,
Right.
then the project is short of funding. So if the error was on VDOT's part, VDOT would need to replace those federal funds so that the CVTA project is fully funded again. I wasn't sure whether item 13 kind of covered that, but I don't think it does. So that's why that additional language was added.
So is this language that's not in the Hampton Roads agreement?
No.
Eric, do you have a read on Barb's question about number 13?
Our attorney doesn't think that 13 covers that situation.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think unless Shane can provide further guidance on that, I think you just say it's not acceptable to remove that.
Eric, I don't think I can give you much more than what the footnote that came from the AG's office on that one.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chet, can you go down to the footnote again there, Chet? Thank you.
Yeah. Can you all read that?
Yes.
I think they're thinking about exposure directly to Cvta, not exposure to a particular project, obviously. So,
Does this need some consideration of modifying the language in the proposed line 14 to address Chesterfield's concerns and make it acceptable to VDOT?
Todd, this is Barb again.
Yes, Barb.
I think there are going to be, as we work through this, there are going to be items like this one where the only way to really get it resolved is to have a meeting.
yeah, and that was suggested by VDOT's legal counsel, that it just needed to be hashed out in a meeting with face to face, perhaps, or offline.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, actually, let's pause for a second and talk about that in light of the task we've been given and the timing of what we've been asked to do. So, I think certainly it's a reasonable expectation to have a meeting. So how do we schedule that? Get revisions, get concurrence prior to the Cvta meeting on December 4, I think it is, without having another TAC meeting. Chet, do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't. I mean, I'm not sure the time is there, to be honest. I mean, a lot of it's going to depend on being able to get the right people at the meeting to be able to discuss. And I mean, I think that I was thinking last night when this was sent out that the resolution today could be some kind of agreement by the TAC that a revised format could be acceptable to TAC, assuming VDOT, and make a recommendation, assuming VDOT would agree to it. But I mean, there's a lot of assumptions there.
Todd, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
Could we continue to go through this, make the notes about stuff we agree with, stuff we don't, and requires a meeting to resolve? I guess we don't have the authority to establish a work committee for that meeting on our behalf. You know, like if we could have a small group of people with VDOT's attorneys, local attorneys, some staff, go through the issues that still remain after today's review and come to some conclusion. Could that group report to the authority at the December 4th meeting without having the full TAC?
I'll defer to Chet and Eric on the ability to do that or not do that.
Mr. Chair, this is Diana. Could I say something quickly?
Yes, Diana.
Is just for this specific item, is this something that could be I don't know, excluded in this agreement and then added to a specific project agreement, one that would have heavy federal funding affiliated with it?
I think that's a good point, Dirona. This is Eric. We have to understand this is a model agreement. We want to get this as close to what a future SPA would actually look like. But certainly, every SPA is going to be a little different and is going to have to be negotiated on certain points to customize it for that particular project. Perhaps, we set this aside right now and say, and keep the language sort of in our back pocket and say, okay, well, it doesn't need to be in the model necessarily, but, we're going to want it from, depending on the project, we may need to insert this at a future date or for some future project. That may be an option.
So Todd,
Yes, Barb.
I wish that were how we could operate. And if it were, we wouldn't be sitting here trying to get this thing right in order to get the MOU, MOA, whatever it is, approved. Certainly the language in the MOA makes it seem like this agreement is just an exhibit, just a model, has the ability to be revised. But the fact that everyone wants to get it done and to the CTB once, they don't want to go back to the CTB with it. I think the body of this agreement, they would like to have final. And it would not be something that would get revised every time it's used. Just the Appendix A and the Appendix B would get revised. So, I don't know, maybe 5 years from now, if we found there were some issues with it, VDOT would be willing to go through and make some revisions. But I don't think they want to go to they don't want to revise it on every single project.
Well, based on how the VDOT agreements for locally administered projects function, I would tend to agree. I mean, the body of the agreement is, for the most part, seems to be pretty standard, and it's the appendices that varies from project to project. So, if the expectation is this is follows that template, then I would concur.
Hey, that made me think of something, Todd. Maybe moving this 14 to an appendices, sort of like the bullets that are on the Appendix A on a LAP project.
Yes.
It could be a bullet that is in there when it needs to be in there and not when it isn't applicable.
Eric, do you see any issues with that approach?
No, that makes sense to me.
I'm glad I was able to inspire you, Barb.
Oh yeah, that was brilliant, Todd. Thank you.
So that would move the language in that paragraph suggesting to move that down to Appendix A, or let's see. Hold on.
One that's got money. I think it's B.
Yeah.
I believe it is B.
Yeah, I think it's B. That's where it lays out all the project costs and reimbursement. So probably want to put that in B.
Okay, that's good.
Does that work for you?
Hey, Todd, this is Shane, VDOT.
Yes, Shane.
I'm not sure it's going to matter where we put it. The comment's probably going to be the same. And, just reading over our response, I'm not sure this is one that we're going to fight too much. If there's no exposure, I'm not sure we're going to argue but so much on leaving this in. So I'm not sure I would move it. I may just make a comment back on this one.
So maybe moving it to the Appendix B would be compromise if there doesn't seem to be a concurrence on leaving it there.
I think Shane is suggesting that we just say we want to keep that in there, and maybe VDOT will agree to that.
Understood.
Or our comments need to explain why we feel there is exposure to the CBTA.
Yeah.
Todd, I've got one kind of general question.
Yes.
The classic dumb question. What's the significance, and maybe this is a question for Eric, of having the line in there that says due to action or inaction solely by VDOT? Do you lose something if you take that out? Does that address the exposure concerns? I mean, I think what Barb was saying was captured in everything else, and I don't really understand legally why that part is in there.
Because you're assigning fault. You know, if it's VDOT's fault, they've got to reimburse us, right? But if it's, you know, some other fault, then maybe they don't necessarily need to reimburse the CBTA. But
wasn't the point of this section about that it's the federal government's fault? No? Okay. Okay.
It's never the federal government's fault, Jim.
well, if it's the CVTA's fault, I think the suggestion, you know, then VDOT wouldn't have to reimburse CVTA for those funds due to CVTA's fault, right? But for VDOT's fault, yes. But
and there's a section later that really does talk about, you know, VDOT's fault versus not, and that's later in here.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, what I'm capturing is that we should comment back to VDOT that something to the effect that due to the potential exposure to CVTA wishes to retain paragraph 14 where it is now. It may require further discussion with VDOT offline, perhaps. In the alternative, place this language in Appendix B. Does that fairly capture where we are with this at this point?
If we're going to have a meeting to discuss, then I think we can talk about the situation that I described. If you're going to send comments back, then I'll shoot you a little blurb about what I was thinking there.
Yeah, I don't know if a meeting will take place or not. Certainly it's been suggested, not by VDOT or by their legal counsel and here today. And if we can work that out, great. I don't know if that's possible or not. Who knows? But yeah, feel free to shoot me a blurb.
Okay, so we're good on that comment at this point? All right, next one.
Okay, next one is in paragraph 15 there, or the new paragraph 15 based upon VDOT's revisions. The footnote 5 there at the end of that paragraph down at the bottom, under review by VDOT Financial. So the CFR reference, let's see. The CFR does appear to reference does appear to be consistent with, I think, what VDOT is saying here.
Hey, Todd, can I interject to keep things rolling?
Yes, Barb.
So that's language out of the locally administered project agreement. I'm not an auditor. So the comment from VDOT saying that it's under review by VDOT Financial sounds great to me.
Okay, so we just leave that alone right now.
Yeah.
That was easy. All right,
Didn't want
next.
Eric struggling to read the federal law.
Okay. All right, moving along. The page 7, some of these comments are just, edits, clerical edits, so not going to spend any time on that. And then I think this is some of the language that Barb was talking about on page 8 here about, assigning risk.
Todd, this is Barb. This is
Yes, Barb.
really thinking about that same scenario that we talked about before. And I think it is just something that's going to require some conversation to resolve.
All right, it's another item to put on the list for the meeting that may or may not be able to happen in time.
Okay. Okay, all right, moving along. Yeah, I think footnote 7 there. I think it's a good idea to build in some sort of mediation or some sort of allowance for negotiations before everybody jumps to legal action.
I think the original language had a process between the commissioner and the executive director.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes back to the whole thing that we've not established our administrative roles and structure quite yet. So we couldn't really keep that language in there. And it also kind of reflected that whole, how much authority do we want people to have? If there's some sort of generic language we can add, that would be fine.
Okay, I'll work on that. We'll go back to the original language and see if we can change that a little bit and come up with something that might work. There needs to be some sort of executive level negotiation authority there.
Is there a way to, well, no, forget it.
Okay. All right. Unless there's further comments, we'll move down to the bottom of the page there on page 11.
Go for it.
Does anybody have comments on that?
So in this section, item A is if if the project cost is coming in less than what was budgeted, the language had written that cost savings would be spread proportionally between the different funding sources. You know, the stuff I'm familiar with are the locally administered projects where it's always a goal of VDOT and the locality to spend federal funds to their full extent first, then state funds, then local funds. So I was trying to reflect something like that by saying that as permitted by cash flow that's shown on Appendix B, in other words, as reflected by the programming of the funds, we should still strive to spend the federal first. So the savings would be applied to CVTA first, state, and then federal.
Mm-hmm.
What was VDOT's response to that?
They want any savings to be proportionately distributed, or it costs and savings. Is that correct, Barb?
Yeah, because B when it's more expensive. Let me see. B, any federal, right. Okay, yeah. So B is kind of the opposite of that. If there's some federal or state funding. Oh, no. That's if state or federal funding falls from the sky, how will you reduce the other fund sources? And I was trying to write something that reflected that whole idea of we want to spend federal money first, then state, then CBTA. So if there's a savings, it would go first to CBTA, then state, and then federal, and not a proportional sort of split. That way there's more CBTA funding that could be allocated to other projects, as it's the most flexible. And there's definitely a plus to spending federal money.
Todd, I agree with Barb. I mean, that's entirely consistent with how we administer local projects and the use of funds.
Understood. So what does it say in the Hampton Roads agreement, Barb? Do you know?
It's the proportional.
Yeah.
So I do have a revision to both of those sections to make it, because the suggested language that was in there talked about expenditures, and that seemed to be a problem noted in the footnotes.
Yeah, they repeated that comment in several places.
So instead, and I might not be using the term cash flow correctly either, so someone needs to point that out if that's not correct, but the revision could be as permitted by cash flow shown on Appendix B, the project cost reductions will reduce funds programmed to the project in this order: CBTA, state, federal. Another way, like in that section B, as permitted by funding availability, priority will be given to utilize federal funds first, followed by state funds, then CBTA funds. So I've got those two suggestions, and I can email those to you guys, or if people think that's all right.
I guess my question or concern would be, will VDOT accept that?
Hey, Todd, this is Shane.
Yes, Shane.
I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't understand all the nuances that VDOT's concerns were on this, but I think it's probably one we're gonna have to put on the table for a discussion if y'all want to stay with what you have proposed on the priority order.
Understood. So we'll make a note that that's a discussion item. Okay, next item.
Okay, hold on one second, please. Okay, paragraph 3 at the top of the following page here, top of page 13.
I think VDOT added that last, however, maybe accidentally. It wasn't in the original. And because we're talking about absorbable cost, I don't think it's applicable.
Shane again.
Yes, Shane.
I think the intent here, Barb, the discussion we had when we were going through the comments was that if there was a shortfall of funds that CBTA was not able or willing to make up, that VDOT wanted the ability to make those funds up themselves and continue the project. So that was the
Right.
intent of the comment.
Which seems appropriate to item 4, non-absorbable additional costs, but I don't think should be included in 3, absorbable additional cost.
That could be correct. I didn't look at the exact section.
Yeah, it wasn't in the original. There was none of the other language that was in 4 wasn't originally in 3. I think it just got added accidentally to 4 or to 3.
So that's a clarification item for them.
So it's okay to have it in 4, but not in 3?
Well, I want to talk about 4.
Okay.
But yeah, it's appropriate to 4, but I've got some comments about it.
Okay.
So can I talk about 4?
You can.
Please.
So Shane, what I was thinking of here was, let's say a project is well over budget and the CVTA wants to cancel it. Had no idea that project was going to be so expensive. But VDOT identifies some state funding, maybe it's smart scale money, maybe it's revenue sharing, that was or could be programmed to accomplish another project for a locality. So VDOT could prevent the cancellation of the CVTA project at the expense of a local project. And we wouldn't want that.
Yeah, I don't know that I can argue that could be a scenario, but I wouldn't imagine that would be very frequent, but certainly could be a possibility.
I'm trying to remember how it was written. Okay, so without it, it's if the additional cost cannot be absorbed in the initial budget by modifying, then the CVTA may, in its sole discretion, elect to find more money or cancel the project or a portion, reduce the scope. So find more money, reduce the scope, or cancel the project. I feel like that is reasonable. If it's a CBTA project, the CBTA should be able to either find more money, reduce the scope, or cancel the project. And VDOT shouldn't have the authority to force the CBTA into continuing with the project.
Todd, this is Shane again. I think the intent was, from VDOT's side, was that if that happened, CVTA would not be on the hook for any more funds, but if VDOT could fund the difference, the project would continue. Obviously, we're thinking these projects are going to be reasonably significant, and we wouldn't want a shortfall to stop a project that was important. So that was the thought. If we need to discuss it, we might need to add that to the item for discussion as well.
There's probably a way to write something that talks about the CVTA and VDOT will work cooperatively to identify additional funds, you know, that kind of stuff.
So it sounds like that we all, both VDOT and CBTA, have the same goal. It's just a matter of clarifying the language.
Yeah, I think it's that may not is causing a little, it's very strong. However, CVTA may not cancel a project. You know. It seems like leaving it out allows the scenario where VDOT could say, hey, this project is more expensive than we thought, but we found this fund source. Are you okay authorizing the additional cost using that fund source? And so then per item number 1, or little, whatever it is, I, CVTA would say, okay, we authorize the additional costs. Anyway, I guess it's something we need to discuss.
It's captured. So unless there's any more questions concerned on that one, next note.
Okay. Paragraph 5 there, termination for additional costs. Any comments on that?
Anyone?
Okay.
Hearing none.
The question was, is respectively mean proportionally? So I think we could answer yes or no.
Oh, I thought we were still talking about that last item on page 13.
Yeah, well, the footnote 11, there's 2 footnotes there. Actually, I'm sorry. Footnote 11 deals with the language that Chet just referenced there in paragraph 5 at the bottom of page 13.
What?
You all.
So
There's no footnote 11 there?
Yeah, there is.
it's at the top
all the
of
way down.
14.
Oh, okay. On mine, it's on the bottom of page 13. Same footnote, though.
So this goes back to the whole spend federal first, state, then CVTA. So by writing respectively, that's what I was trying to get to, and not proportionally.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is no.
Right.
Okay. Any other comments on that?
Hearing none.
Okay. New paragraph 6, top of that page.
So, Todd, this is Barb.
Yes, Barb.
What I was thinking of here was it's possible that eminent domain proceedings, the cost incurred with those could exceed the funding shown on the Appendix B. So I wouldn't want the entire shortfall to come from CVTA funds. But this would, especially if CVTA only had a fraction of the funds to the total project. So in this instance, using that proportionate share of federal, state, and CVTA funds as shown on the Appendix B would make sense. To share the pain.
So this should be proportionally instead of respectively?
Yep. That's just my opinion. But
This is Joe. Todd.
Yes, Joe. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay, yes. So this might be getting down in the weeds, but when what are we talking about when we are referring to additional cost? So additional cost over and above what would be my question, because it doesn't appear to be defined in this paragraph.
it's the cost associated with the eminent domain proceedings. So a project could be complete and it could take years to actually get the outstanding eminent domain issues resolved. And we really don't know the amount that they would be settled at, the judgments for them, right?
Right, I understand that. But at the same time, we budget for that, but it could exceed that budget. But I guess really, I'm kind of like looking, where would that number be stated that would say this is the cost? So I can then say anything above X amount is additional cost. I think it's just too vague, really, to be stated in an agreement like this without some clarification as to exactly what is the cost, so then we can determine the delta as additional cost. I think we could argue a lot over what is additional.
It is reflective of the section that's right below it, which is additional costs from contractor claims. It's a very similar situation.
So that's clear to me because that would be, any claim would be considered additional. Are we saying any condemnation cost is additional?
No, because we would, in that same section, number 6, it talks about getting a quarterly report from VDOT, which would include offer amounts at the time of certificate filing. So we could keep in our budget some best guess of what the judgment would be, but it could be higher than that. Just like a contractor claim, we could have some money reserved to address a contractor claim, but we really don't have any idea what that is going to end up being.
I hear you, and not to be argumentative, but I just think that we need to be able to state the right-of-way cost is X. Okay, the construction cost in the next section is Y. Anything above Y is additional cost. Anything above X in terms of right-of-way is additional cost. I think we need to define that somewhere in the, I guess, one of the Appendix B, perhaps, somewhere that needs to be stated. I'm done. Thank you.
It's also a little similar to what we were talking about previously with just a project costing more than we thought, the absorbable and non-absorbable. All along with the project, we have estimates and we hope that the estimate's right. And we build that into the Appendix B, but there could be additional cost because we didn't get the estimate right. These two sections have to do with how are we going to deal with that after the project's complete.
So I guess my question is how do we deal with that in the VDOT locally administered agreements?
We had a claim on a big project, but we had used up the VDOT funding and we had to pay it out of local funds. With right-of-way now, thinking about revenue sharing, we have to notify VDOT at project closeout if there's outstanding eminent domain. And we notify them what the offer was at time of filing certificate. And it's understood that we can use revenue sharing to settle the judgment, to pay for the judgment once we know what that is.
So the goal here is to be able to use a combination of Cvta and VDOT money to do the same thing for these projects.
Right. And the additional language at the end of 6 was just addressing the sentence before it where it says additional costs will be paid from available funds. Well, there might not be available funds. So then what do you do?
So Eric, any suggestions?
I think we just explained to VDOT that this additional sentence is to address the scenario where there are no additional funds available in the project budget. And that's why that was inserted. And if they don't agree to it, then further discussion is necessary.
All right, everybody good with that approach? Barb,
Yeah, I'm good with that.
okay. Next item.
Okay. And then just to make sure, footnote number 12 there at the bottom of page 14. I just answered that question. No, this is intended to be respectively, again, not proportionately.
Yep.
Okay. Moving along. Now we're into the appendices. Appendix A. And a lot of this is sort of clerical in nature. Any issues with any of this?
I had suggested including a estimate, budget might not be the right word, an estimate of the costs associated with some of the high level task in project development, survey, utility designation, geotech, environmental, and so on. And that got deleted. I think it is helpful to be able to see the total cost broken down, but we don't do that on LEP projects, so we don't necessarily need to do that here.
Okay. So the revisions that VDOT is offering are acceptable.
Yeah, I think they're all right, unless someone disagrees. Yeah.
Anybody have any issues, concerns? Okay.
Okay. Good to go there. Appendix B. Sorry, bear with me. I'm having some technical difficulty.
Todd.
Yes, Barb.
Appendix B looks very different than the HR TAC Appendix B. The cash flow tables are missing, and I was wondering if that was just an oversight. The HR TAC agreement has cash flow by year and then monthly. So they've got those tasks. They've got kind of these weird tasks, but anyways, that task that I was talking about before, they have cash flow associated with those different tasks to a certain degree, on a yearly and then a monthly basis. And that was taken out here. And it seems like it was an oversight.
Todd, this is Shane.
Yes, Shane, thank you.
Yeah, I think the discussion we had on our end, Barb, exclusive of the HR Tech standard agreement, is that we didn't see a lot of value in the monthly cash flow. I think that's probably a Cvta function. VDOT's and federal funding is all by fiscal year, so that's where the federal state money's coming from. Cvta obviously will probably be a little more monthly, but we didn't see a lot of value in placing that in the agreement on every project to break it down by months. We just felt like it was going to be a lot of data that may not, and it could lead to like a cash flow curve, and we just didn't want to get into that type of analysis in the project agreement. So that was the thought.
We probably
Go ahead.
need to include language in the body of the agreement that VDOT will provide their anticipated cash flow? Because if we were in a bonding situation, we would need to know what the anticipated draw would be. And maybe it doesn't need to be monthly, it could be quarterly. I don't really know how that stuff works, but I think there may be situations where we do need from VDOT how you think the money is going to be spent.
Could this possibly be a question for the finance working group to consider?
Mhm. Yeah, that's way over my head.
Shane, do you know if the reason that the suggestion was taken out the monthly, was that just based on experience from Hampton Roads?
I don't think it was based on Hampton Roads experience, Todd. I think it was just a discussion we had about, like Barb said, getting into that cash flow curve, and there just being issues if we got ahead of that curve, and we just preferred to keep it at a fiscal year level, at least on the agreement. There'll be backup documentation for all of this, but we just didn't feel like it needed to be in the agreement, all that detail.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. If, as long as we can add to the body of the agreement something about you guys will provide us with cash flow updates quarterly or something, I don't know. And again, the finance committee would be better to figure out how to.
Finance working group, right?
Right. Finance working group, finance committee. Oh, right. Finance.
Two different things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, had a little brain malfunction.
So Chet and Eric, can you get that in front of them at some point?
Yeah, I think we can. Let's see. Shane, do you think VDOT would accept inserting something to that effect in the body?
I don't think we have any problem providing an anticipated cash flow. I think where our holdup would be is if you were going to hold us to that cash flow, in that we would be fronting money for the project. I think that would, if we said we were going to spend $1 million on X day and we spent $1.5 million, that Cvta wouldn't come back and say, we're not paying you the $1.5 million until it shows up on the curve.
So on page 4, item 7, updating cash flow estimates, VDOT shall permit Cvta to periodically update cash flow estimates with the objective of keeping those estimates accurate. It's sort of like it's not just us with cash flow. VDOT should provide, or maybe that's the language we wanted. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like that paragraph 7 I think you're referencing there. I think does that cover it?
Well, I need to know from VDOT, who's administering the project, how much they think they're going to be spending. So the very first sentence seems backwards.
Okay.
I no longer see the first sentence.
It's on page 4, number 7.
Okay.
Oh, Eric, are you not, or Chet, are you not sharing? I can see it.
Yeah.
No,
Screen.
my screen had slid over. That was my bad.
Oh. But then the second sentence is good. VDOT shall provide all available information required so they can assure. So yeah, I like that.
Would it make sense if we reverse those sentences? Like put the second sentence first and the first sentence.
Maybe it should say VDOT and Cvta shall periodically update cash flow estimates. and so I think change periodically to regularly. VDOT and CVTA will regularly update cash flow estimates with the objective of keeping those estimates accurate. So get rid of shall permit and put an and.
All right, here's what I've done. I inserted a revision where it says VDOT and CVTA shall regularly update cash flow estimates for the project with the objective of keeping, et cetera, et cetera. Does that capture what you just said, Barb?
Yeah, that's good. What do you think about that, Shane?
I don't see where we would have any problem with that. I mean,
Yeah, and then
the info.
on the on-screen, it should read VDOT and CVTA shall regularly update cash flow estimates.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Okay, I don't think what's on screen is, oh wait, is it?
That's what it says.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's so small. I'm just having a hard time reading it, but yeah, it's good. Looks good.
So
But then-
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. But the last sentence references Appendix B where they're not being shown anymore. I think we need to really make sure we don't want even like a fiscal year cash flow. I don't know. I think we probably don't need it, but
I think we got fiscal year.
Mm-hmm.
oh, is it?
Appendix B, Barb.
Okay.
Yeah, it's by fiscal year.
So to our earlier point, since this is in the financial appendix, which is equivalent of the Appendix A for locally administered agreements, if we needed a different cash flow for a particular project, then that could probably be stipulated in that appendices with modifications, correct?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because this gives us the flexibility to regularly update cash flows. So if we have a project where cash flows were more critical due to whatever circumstances, then that could be stipulated with a modification of that particular Appendix B.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kind of to the bullet point.
But I think VDOT doesn't want to have anything more than the fiscal year in the Appendix B. And anything else is more informal,
Right.
quarterly, monthly. They just don't want to be tied to it in case it gets out of whack.
So I think we've worked this out. Does it still need to be reviewed by the finance working group, or are we good?
I'm good.
Chet, Eric, Shane?
I think from my side, I'm good with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I would suggest that we just ask the finance committee to review the agreement, keeping in mind a bonding situation. Because I don't understand that at all. And they might need something more in here that's not in there. I don't know.
Chet, I think you and I can route this to the finance working group, the entire SPA, or perhaps just Appendix B. I don't know, but probably the entire SPA, and ask them for their input on it. Is that acceptable?
I've got no problem doing that. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out how we're going to, what the time frame is for all this. But we can discuss after we get through the document.
My suggestion is send the entire draft to them, point out specifically this item we just discussed, and ask for their concurrence or feedback. Because I think that will be important when we get to the full CBTA, is if they've reviewed it and have any issues.
Sure.
Your timing note Concern is noted. All right, what else we have? Yes.
Todd, this is Joe. This might be a good time to bring this up. So on the very first page, it refers to a CVTA project number. And on Appendix B at the top, it refers to a CVTA project. So first, we would want to be consistent, I would think. But second, I would think that these projects would be assigned a VDOT project number, UPC number of some type. And I don't like the idea of creating a new project number, a CVTA project number, just adding to confusion. Anybody can shed a little bit of light on that?
I think if it's got multiple funding sources, if it's got state or federal money, then it would have a VDOT project number. But if it was entirely CVTA money, it would not have a VDOT project number.
If it was entirely CBTA money, then we wouldn't need this agreement, right? Or I guess we would if VDOT was administering.
That's
Right.
Is VDOT would still have, if VDOT's administering it, I presume they'd still have a VDOT project number, right?
It wouldn't be in their 6-year plan, I don't think.
Okay.
We would probably have to create a UPC, even if it was a dummy UPC, just to track everything. So I'm sure it would have some number for VDOT's use.
Okay.
So just UPC number, is that what we're inserting there?
Yeah, I would suggest if we could do away with a CVTA project number and rely on the VDOT UPC, which is a unique identifier for every project, that would be the way to go. But if it's unavoidable, then I understand needing to develop a CVTA number, but that's just an extra step, just I think we'd want to avoid.
Joe, I just removed the word number from the first page. Is that, we still want to list what the project is, right?
I would also include a UPC number there, if applicable.
We're almost done.
You want to check those other forms, Appendix C and other documents, just to be consistent with what we just discussed.
Sure thing. All right, Eric, back to you.
Okay. So we're back to Appendix B, right? We made some changes there. Everybody, I think we've already said this is okay. The rest of this is all right.
Barb,
Yep, yep.
good.
Okay. Scrolling down here. Appendix C, form of payment requisition. There weren't any changes to that. Detailed PAYGO request, no changes. Appendix D, reports to be provided. There was just the one change with the addition of paragraph 3. There it is.
Done.
Yeah, so that's good. And there you go.
So now it's the hard part, trying to figure out how to get this resolved before December 4th.
Yes, let's talk about that. Everybody all at once.
Well, I mean, I'll just say it. There's really no reason that we couldn't execute the MOA without this exhibit finalized.
Well, Cvta has already approved it without the SPA, but VDOT and CTB are not, we know, not willing to approve the MOA without the SPA having been resolved and everything tied up.
Right. But there's really, I mean, that's definitely a preference, and it's fine that we're working towards that. But
Todd, this is Nicole. I just
Yes, Nicole.
want to share a comment that Ms. Russell left in the chat. She had to move on for another meeting, so I'm just going to read it. She said, I want to share that a quick second meeting prior to the December Cvta meeting to consider and approve revisions may be possible if we are all agreeable to non-conventional scheduling at 7 a.m. I also support conditional approval subject to the items remaining for discussion with VDOT and legal counsel. That was her comment.
Okay, thank you, Nicole.
another question I had was, when we started the discussion by saying that the agreement hadn't been fully vetted by VDOT yet, and I know that these changes that we have been looking at this morning haven't been reviewed by local attorneys. So first, when do we think we'll get a final from VDOT?
This is Shane.
Yes, Shane.
Yeah, I don't anticipate any other major comments, Barb. I think some of the things were still under review by like VDOT Finance on the audit things, those like that. There was no other substantial comments that I would expect from VDOT.
Okay.
So we have, I believe, 3 or 4 discussion items that need to get worked out following this meeting. Eric and Chet, do you have a suggested approach?
Well, I would suggest we be able to confer with with a couple of key staff members and have a meeting with legal counsel for VDOTs and Shane offline. That wouldn't be a committee meeting, it would be a staff meeting. So it wouldn't be subject to FOIA, and it wouldn't be a committee of this body. Therefore, that conversation can be had offline, I believe.
All right, and then following the outcome of that, I guess it still needs to be recirculated back to the locality attorneys. Because I just heard from my county attorney, he basically said, I got it late yesterday, haven't reviewed it. So I contacted him and said I would hold off until you would get further the next draft revision.
Right. Yeah, I don't know when we could have the discussion with the VDOT folks, and I don't know when that could happen. I mean, conceivably it could happen this afternoon or Monday or Tuesday. I can make myself available, or I think it could be that just a couple of people need to talk with Commissioner Brick and work this out.
Hey, Todd, this is Shane.
Yes, Jane.
Yeah, I think from the VDOT side, there's probably no more than a couple people that need to be involved. Probably the commissioner, Laura Farmer from our CFO are the two big ones that really need to be involved.
So I guess we have 3 working days next week. So do we think that's something that can happen?
I know it's a priority for the commissioner. I can't speak to his schedule next week, but I know it's a priority for him.
Hey, Todd.
Yes, Barb.
I haven't spoken with our attorney, but I could check his schedule and volunteer him if he's available. And I'm happy to participate in that discussion also.
Okay, are there any other member localities, representatives, or speaking for their attorneys that may want to participate? Hearing none, I will speak for Henrico. I think with the few remaining issues, I'll defer to Chesterfield and Eric and VDOT to work it out. I don't see anything that I think causes us great concern one way or the other at this point.
Mr. Chair, this is Diana.
Yes, Diana.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Richmond can sit out of the meeting, but I would just ask how, and I guess give everybody else a chance if they want to talk about the meeting, but how we will, what's our next steps in regard to this group making a recommendation, and how, waiting for after the meeting, just some of the next steps and how we'll move forward.
Well,
Okay. Go ahead.
Todd, Zarek, I might suggest if we could, if Chet and I could work with Shane to get a meeting organized by, say, no later than Tuesday of next week, or when, sometime next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, hash this out, hopefully, and then submit it out to the TAC and local legal counsel and everybody, with the idea that we either get it done or we don't, and then TAC could meet on November 30th or December 1st or 2nd or even the 3rd, and then vote to forward it with a recommendation for approval on the 4th. Is that?
So maybe we should, so we'll try to get the small group organized as soon as possible, but we should probably also arrange that TAC meeting for ahead of December 4th, just get it on people's calendars, just like we did with this guy.
Right.
And it probably would be better to do it earlier than on the 3rd in case there's some issue.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Chair, this is Diana.
Yes, sir.
I'm good for the 30th, the 1st. Probably, let me see, I gotta get my calendar back up.
Chet, do you think you could just send a meeting poll out to everyone?
Sure.
So the range of dates you're looking at will be the 30th through the 3rd?
I'd say the 30th through the 2nd.
Second.
Yeah.
We assume that it's not gonna need a lot of time to resolve.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, I think as long as we think it's gonna be less than an hour, hopefully we can squeeze it in.
Yes, we'll get that poll out today.
Okay. So then the hope is that the small group will be able to schedule something by early or about before Thursday of next week. Work out the remaining items. Meantime, we will schedule another special TAC meeting for beginning of the following week, and hopefully have a final document that the TAC can recommend for approval to the Cvta on the 4th. I guess the only remaining question I have is, once the smaller group discussion happens, there will be some changes that will need to be incorporated and then sent back out to both TAC and the locality attorneys to review. So we'll need a period of time working around the Thanksgiving break to allow that review.
As well as the finance work group.
As well as the finance work group, which how do they function, Chet? Do they have recurring meetings? Do you just send things out on a as need basis? Or
they're ready to help whenever possible. There's no regular meetings right now.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
pretty informal.
Okay, so maybe they're not an issue. I guess the only concern I have is just the allowing time for the locality attorneys to do another review in light of the holidays and their schedules. I guess Chesterfield shouldn't be a concern since you'll be part of that conversation. So I guess I'm speaking for my attorney and maybe City of Richmond and Hanover and others. Dorana, Joe, anybody else? Do y'all have any concerns, issues with respect to that item?
No, this is Diana.
So on that, Chet and Eric, do we want to take the document that we have now edited today and send that out with consideration of the 3 or 4 outstanding items to that are to be resolved, so that they can at least look at the rest of the document?
Yeah, I think Chet and I probably need to get our versions together because, you know, he's taking notes and I'm taking notes, and we need to make sure we have one consistent document, and then we can circulate that.
I think that would be good, and then just with the explanation that that the remaining items will be discussed in conjunction with VDOT next week and hopefully resolved. So,
Yes, sir.
so you think y'all will be able to get that coordinated and out today?
I believe so.
Okay,
Yes.
very good. Thank you. So, any other discussion, consideration on that item? All right. Thank you, everybody, for your effort on that. So next item, Cvta TAC member comments. Anybody have any other items they wish to discuss? All right. Hearing none, the next official TAC meeting will be December 7th. We now have another agenda item for you to put on there, Chat, based on our earlier discussion. And then you'll be sending out a when is good or doodle poll for another special meeting week of the 30th. Correct?
That's correct.
All right. Anybody have anything else? All right. We will adjourn. Thank you.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.